Hi, everyone. Thanks so much again for having me. My name's Angela. I'm a fifth-year PhD candidate at Stanford. I work in the Department of Communication in the Social Media Lab with Jeff Hancock. Today, I'm excited to tell you about our work on social media mindsets and how they relate to psychological well-being. This work is coming out in just a couple weeks at the Journal of Computer-Mediated Communication. It involves a series of 7 studies, so for this 5-minute talk, I'm just going to tell you about our key couple insights and our high-level framework. Okay. So I'm going to start with a hopefully uncontroversial statement that people have strong beliefs about social media. When you listen to the news, when you turn on a podcast, when you talk to parents, there's this dominant narrative that social media is a harmful addiction. It takes away from our lives, we're mindlessly using it all the time, and there have been very strong causal claims made out in this public narrative that exacerbates the youth mental health crisis, causing and increasing depression, anxiety, and stress. But I don't have to tell the people in this room that we're moving towards this understanding of heterogeneity in social media effects. Unsurprisingly, it affects different people in different ways, depending on your age, gender, social context, family dynamics, motivations, and the types of content that you engage with, as well as the platforms that you're using. And so what I want to talk about is how the public narrative, the beliefs that we have about the nature of social media in our lives, can also have an effect on our psychological well-being. So I'm drawing from social psychological theory on mindsets or implicit theories that argues that people have these core assumptions about the nature and workings of concepts within ourselves and in the world. You might be familiar with work on fixed and growth mindsets of intelligence and how these beliefs about intelligence go on to shape appraisals, experiences, and behaviors to ultimately affect downstream outcomes. So in work that I did with Jeff that was out in Social Media Society, we found that people have 2 core dimensions to how they think about the role of social media in their own lives. The first revolves around this idea of valence. So fundamentally, in general, do I think this is good for me or bad for me? Very simple, very straightforward. I think the other dimension is one that I'm particularly interested in. So perceptions or beliefs about the amount of agency that you have over social media. So think about your own social media use. Do you think that you're in control of it, capable of using it to do things that are personally meaningful to you, or do you feel like it's controlling you, it's exerting influence, and that you are dependent on it? So we were interested in looking at how these 2 dimensions of social media mindsets relate to a series of psychological well-being indicators like life satisfaction, social support, and psychological distress. And to do so, we developed and validated a scale. I know there was some really great talk yesterday about the importance of having good measures, so I'm not going to talk you through the whole process, but just know that we followed these best practices for scale development, and this involved a series of 4 studies. But what I'm going to tell you about now is a series of 3 survey studies that we conducted where we showed people the social media mindset scale. We asked them to tell us about their well-being, and we also asked them to complete a standard battery of measures related to social media use, intensity, as well as active-passive use. I want to note that for the 3rd study that has 162 people, we were also able to obtain a logged measure of their social media use for asking them to send in a screenshot of their Apple screen time. It's a very cheap and easy way of getting logged screen time data if you need it. So let's look at the results. At a high level, what we did is we ran a series of multiple regressions where we ran social media mindsets to all these well-being indicators while controlling for demographic differences and self-reported social media use. So first, what we find is that people who have more positive valence mindsets, I think social media is enhancing, I think it's good for me, they tend to be more satisfied with their lives, they tend to perceive more social support from their friends. In particular, we can think of how this plays out in terms of social media's role in supporting and maintaining close relationships. But what's really interesting is if you look at psychological distress, which is broken down to 3 subscales of depression, anxiety, and stress. So if you have this mindset that social media is good for you, yes, you tend to be less depressed overall, but what's really important is people's perceptions of the agency they have. When you feel like you're in control of your social media experiences, you tend to report less psychological distress, indicating the importance of believing that you have some control or ability to feel empowered over your use. And we replicated these findings in a bigger study, in study 2, where we largely see the same pattern of effects. Okay, so at a high level, we find that, what are the mindsets that are associated with positive outcomes? When you feel in control and when you think that it's good for you, you tend to have these better psychological well-being outcomes. In contrast, when you have this mindset that this thing is out of my hands, it's something that I can't control, I'm dependent and it's bad for me, very much in line with the public narrative that we've been hearing out in the news, this actually affects people's well-being as well. I'm not going to talk about it here, but one of the results we show is a moderation, where when you spend more time on social media and you have this negative addiction mindset, you feel worse because you appraise that time as wasted time. This was stupid, this was bad for me, and I can't even control what I'm doing on social media, which then has ultimate downstream effects on your well-being outcomes. And so I'm going to skip over this section for the sake of time, but we were also interested in understanding how much variance in well-being do mindsets explain relative to standard assessments of intensity of use, amount of use, and active-passive. And what we find is that these mindsets explain more variance in well-being than existing measures, indicating that we should be thinking about not not only how much we're using social media and how we're using it, but our fundamental beliefs about the role that this plays in our lives. I just wanted to close by adding a couple of future directions that we're really excited about. So we're thinking about how it relates to behavior with Joe Baer and the Mobile Social Cognition Lab. I'm really interested in thinking about how parents and kids think about the role of social media in the household. So all parents think their kids are addicted, but kids think they have control. And finally, I wanted to shout out the Psych of Tech Institute here. We're examining how mindsets relate to specific experiences on platforms with the social media index that Ravi talked about yesterday. Thanks so much. The link to our preprint is up here, or I'm happy to email the paper. Thanks.